My beloved child, stop for a moment, because something has been said about you that you were never supposed to hear, and although the words may sound simple, the intention behind them is far more complicated than you realize, because someone has been looking at you through the eyes of comparison, judgment, and misunderstanding, while heaven has been watching something completely different unfold inside you. Some people think your appearance is not very pleasing. They have looked at you from the outside and decided that they already know your value, your character, your future, and even the kind of love you deserve, but they have made one mistake that people often make when they judge what they can see. Because they have mistaken what is visible for what is valuable, and they have no idea what is beginning to change beneath the surface of your life. You may have felt it before, a strange look, a quiet comparison, a comment disguised as a joke, a person suddenly becoming colder when you entered the room, someone complimenting another person while barely noticing you, a family member making you feel as though you needed to look different, dress differently, speak differently, or become someone else just to deserve the same attention that others receive so easily. And perhaps you smiled, perhaps you pretended you did not care, perhaps you laughed along because you did not want anyone to know that their words had reached somewhere deep inside you. But later, when you were alone, those words returned to your mind with a force you could not explain, and you began wondering whether there was something wrong with you that everyone else could see except you. But what if the problem was never your appearance? What if the problem was the eyes looking at you? What if someone had been measuring you with a standard that was never designed to recognize your kind of beauty? What if the very thing they criticized is connected to the part of you that will eventually make them realize how badly they misunderstood you? You have spent too much time wondering whether you were attractive enough, impressive enough, noticeable enough, or worthy enough. When the truth is that your value was never waiting for someone else's approval to become real. There are people who only recognize beauty when it is presented in a familiar form. They recognize confidence when it looks loud. They recognize success when it looks expensive. They recognize love when it looks dramatic. They recognize beauty when everyone else has already agreed that something is beautiful. But you were never meant to be understood by everyone at first glance. There is something about you that requires time. Something that becomes more visible the longer someone knows you. Something that cannot be captured by a photograph, a mirror, a first impression, or a passing glance. And someone who once judged you too quickly is beginning to discover exactly that. You may not know who this person is yet. You may have several possibilities in your mind. Perhaps you are thinking of someone who once made you feel unattractive. Perhaps you remember a relationship where you constantly compared yourself to other people. Perhaps you remember standing beside someone and feeling invisible. Perhaps you remember looking at another person and asking yourself why they seemed to receive the attention you secretly wished someone would give you. But there was something you could not see at that time. You were comparing your unfinished chapter to someone else's carefully displayed moment. You were comparing your private insecurities to another person's public confidence. You were looking at yourself through the harshest possible mirror, and someone else was influencing that mirror without you realizing it. A person said something. Someone laughed. Someone made a careless observation. Someone compared you. and slowly, without noticing, you began repeating their judgment inside your own mind. That is how the deepest wounds often begin, not with one devastating sentence, but with a small comment repeated enough times until you start believing it belongs to you, but it does not belong to you. That voice is not your identity, that judgment is not your destiny. That opinion is not your future, and the person who said it may soon discover that the version of you they judged no longer exists, because something has been happening inside you, quietly, slowly, almost invisibly. You have been changing, your eyes have become different, your silence has become stronger, your boundaries have become clearer, your heart has become wiser. You no longer chase every person who pulls away. You no longer explain yourself to everyone who misunderstands. You no longer need every room to approve of you before you feel comfortable standing inside it, and that transformation is beginning to affect the way people see you. Someone who barely noticed you before may suddenly notice you. Someone who dismissed you may suddenly become curious. Someone who once compared you to another person may begin comparing that other person to you. And that reversal will not happen because you suddenly became someone else. It will happen because they finally learned how to see you. There is a person who has been watching this change from a distance. They have noticed that you carry yourself differently. They have noticed that you do not seek attention the way you once did. They have noticed that you can enter a room quietly and somehow change the atmosphere without saying much. They have noticed the way you listen, the way you remember small details, the way you care about people even when you have your own struggles, the way you can be hurt and still choose kindness. And strangely, those are the things they are beginning to find beautiful. At first, they did not understand why they were becoming more interested in you. They tried to explain it logically. They told themselves it was nothing. They told themselves they were simply curious. They told themselves they were imagining things. But then they saw you again, and something inside them shifted. Not because you were trying to impress them, not because you changed your appearance for them, not because you suddenly became what they thought you should be. It was because you were simply being yourself, and that frightened them more than they expected. Because they realized something uncomfortable. They had judged you before they knew you. They had listened to someone else's opinion. They had formed an impression from a distance, and now they were beginning to see how wrong they had been. There is a particular memory connected to this person. You may not know the memory, but they do. It is the moment when they first noticed something about you that they could not explain. Maybe it was your smile when you thought nobody was watching. Maybe it was the way you helped someone without expecting praise. Maybe it was the way you became quiet when everyone else was talking. Maybe it was the look in your eyes when someone mentioned something painful. Whatever it was, it stayed with them, and that is where the story becomes more interesting. Because the person who once thought your appearance was not pleasing may now be realizing that appearance was never the reason they were drawn to you in the first place. They were drawn to something deeper, something they could not name, something that became stronger every time they saw your character, every time they heard your voice, every time they watched you overcome another difficult moment. Every time they saw you choose dignity instead of revenge, every time they noticed you caring even after being disappointed, there is a kind of beauty that arrives before you understand it. It is the beauty of becoming, the beauty of healing, the beauty of surviving something that was supposed to make you bitter and choosing not to become cruel, the beauty of learning to stand alone without becoming cold, the beauty of realizing that not everyone deserves access to your heart. You have been developing that beauty without realizing it, and someone is beginning to notice. But there is a reason they are noticing now and not before. You are no longer asking them to notice. That is the difference. When you stop begging to be seen, you become free enough to be seen clearly. You have spent seasons trying to prove that you were worthy. You tried to be attractive enough, helpful enough, understanding enough, patient enough, available enough. You thought that if you gave people enough of yourself, eventually they would recognize your value. But love does not work that way. The right people do not need you to destroy yourself before they appreciate you. The right people do not require you to become smaller so they can feel larger. The right people do not make you compete for basic respect. And the person who is beginning to recognize you is learning that lesson in a way they did not expect. Something happened recently. Perhaps it was a conversation. Perhaps someone mentioned your name. Perhaps a photograph appeared unexpectedly. Perhaps they encountered you somewhere. Perhaps another person praised you, and instead of feeling nothing, they felt something they did not expect: jealousy. Not the kind of jealousy that comes from ownership, but the uncomfortable realization that other people were beginning to see what they had previously ignored. Someone said something positive about you. Someone noticed your presence. Someone described you in a way that challenged the old opinion. And suddenly, this person realized that they were not the only one capable of seeing something special in you anymore. That realization created a strange question inside them. Have I been wrong about this person?